So I'm Chris Bush. I'm head of UX at a company called Sigma, and we are based in Macclesfield and Cambridge. I head up the UX team. Been doing UX for about 15 years now and help out at the Northern User Experience Group as well. I'm going to talk to you today about building better user experiences and also give you some guides to doing some user testing if that's what you guys are interested in doing yourselves. Can you hear me? The volume seems to be. Cool. So, these are some of the customers we work with. Can everyone see the slides okay? Are they clear? I've just did some very quick reworking to up font sizes and stuff in the last session. Cool. So this is the sort of stuff that we do quite a lot. So almost every one of our projects involves user engagement in some way. Normally that's user testing, sometimes it's interviews and stakeholder workshops, but we try to involve users all the way through all our projects. So what I'm going to do is talk you through what usability testing is, why it matters, and how you can use it to improve your overall experience. Some common usability findings that we see pretty regularly, pretty much in almost every test that we do, and then give you some tips and techniques to help you guys run some usability testing sessions as well. So, has anyone done usability testing before? Oh, very cool, very cool. Cool. How did you do it? Raise your hands if it was lab-based, like a proper lab. Guerrilla? Sort of like low-tech, just testing? Cool. So, whenabouts did you do it in the projects? Did you do it towards the start of the project when you were doing your research? Can you just keep your hands up, just so you get an idea? Cool, very cool. How many people did it sort of like mid-project or at the end of a project as well? Cool. So, from my point of view, the ones that always seem to provide the most value to me are the ones that you do after you've done some user research and you've got some ideas, and you do it before you start going into your build process. And the reason I find that one most valuable is it basically allows you to get more insight out of your users while you're coming up with concepts before you've invested a lot of time and effort into development. So how many people operate Agile? If you've done usability testing, have you done it within sprints? Or has it been set phases? Cool. So this probably won't be too much an issue. The usability testing I always tend to find the least useful is the one that comes at the very end of a project, just before go live. And normally it's kind of done as a rubber stamp, but what it really does is if you uncover anything that's major, it doesn't give you very much opportunity to fix it. Whereas if you can get that insight a little bit further down the stream, you can then use that to basically hopefully influence you before you run out of dev budget and things like that. Cool. So, what is usability testing? So Steve Krug describes usability testing as usability, a means of making sure that something works well and that there is a person of average ability or experience can use it for their intended purpose without getting hopelessly frustrated. So, why does that matter? Can everyone just start reading that for me? Who's bored? Yep. Cool. Any idea what it's about? It's deliberately badly written, and there's deliberately no paragraph breaks in it. And the actual chunk is actually double the size of that. I shortened it for the small screen. It's about washing clothes. And the issue is once you've got that headline at the top, you can make sense of that paragraph. But without that headline, that text only makes sense to someone who fully understands what that text is telling them when they approach it. And this is what happens when we build projects. So we go into a project, and after you've been on a project for a couple of months, we all start talking in shorthand about functionality, and we start making assumptions because as a group, we've clarified what those assumptions are. So by adding usability testing to your projects, even if it's Guerrilla and you're doing it quick and cheap, it allows you to pull yourself back up and make sure that you're still applying a relevant level of context to your projects that your users will understand. So, has anyone seen this before? Cool. Let me just quickly jump to that.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Sorry about that.
The answer is 13.
Did anyone get close to that? I realised the screen jumped. Okay.
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Who saw the bear? So basically, we're task-based creatures. If you give us a job to do, we are going to try our hardest to do that job. And as my wife tells me regularly, we're really good at ignoring people as well, and ignoring things. So when we decide that something isn't important to us, we block it out. If you're walking down the street and there's cars whizzing past you, you don't notice them. If you're on a website and there's banners flicking around the sides of it, you don't notice them because they're not pertinent to the task that you're trying to do. If you try to cross the road, suddenly those cars become important and you notice them because you don't want to get run over. So your context changes as you're doing different things. So what I'm going to do is show you a short video, if it works okay.
I think I'm going to look on here to see how I can set some water guidelines. I really don't know where to start.
Well, you got one little problem.
Okay, tell us about that too.
Whatever's written down there,
Yeah, tell us about that.
I can't read it.
You can't.
Can you guys hear that?
I got 20/20 vision, but not that good. Pause for a second.
I did because it says you must enter a valid email address. I felt like saying, give me a chance, I've not struck it yet.
Right.
Like jumping the gun a bit. But I haven't started filling anything in yet. That's because I feel like a shouting.
That share button that you found, what do you expect to happen when you click it? Not that.
I'm not sure I like this clock. Let's see, I got in at 12.
I've just got. Has anyone seen this clock before? This is part of Google Material Design.
I mean, if it's true, then that's good. What girls are being all a bit fishy?
Right.
Right, why is no one doing 4? Oh, there's one. 4.5, fair enough.
That's frustrating that I type the name, and then I want to actually start the search. And so I'm clicking on the search button up here, but it does nothing because I haven't cleared the keyboard down below, so I need to click on the search button on the keyboard instead. So, and I've made that mistake twice already. Okay, so I'm trying.
What did you just press?
So I was trying to get back to the search page, and I pressed the little flag, which I guess is a
How would you add that to your favorite contacts?
probably that icon here. Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't say. If you wanted to add Richard to your favorites, I did that search from every time. How would you do that? Okay, the smiley face, I guess.
Oh, sorry. Lost the mouse. Oh, cool. Sorry about that. Usability issue. So, how common is that to people? Are people used to seeing those sort of things with UIs and seeing people struggle with things that look apparently simple? Is that something that you guys are used to seeing when you test your things? A lot of it comes out of the fact of when we're actually working on a project, one, we don't know what the user's mindset is, so we have to make some assumptions, and we try and do that to our best of our ability. But the other thing is we spend a lot of time looking at single screens or single sets of code or single user flows, and we go through them lots and lots and lots. And the context that I was talking about, the washing clothes, applies to us. So when we're looking at a project and you see a UI element, it appears natural to us, but we know the purpose that it was put there for. The user, when they come to an app for the first time, they've got to decipher lots and lots and lots of different pieces of information and then take that and then do something meaningful with it. And quite often, the smallest little bits of assistance that you can apply to a UI can make it a lot easier for a user to get through something. So what I was going to do is just give you a handful of some of the real common findings that we see. And these genuinely do happen pretty much every usability test we do. So, first one is like navigation isn't predictable. So if you look at the top nav on the O2 website, it says shop, you can probably guess what that is. Perks, might be able to guess what that is. It's quite a young word. Would someone older be able to guess it? Apps, I came here to buy a mobile phone. What are apps? And connectivity. What do people think? Question. What do people think is in the connectivity tab? So, and who here's got a mobile phone, uses it regularly, goes on to these sort of websites to buy new mobile phones? So, we're in their demographic of users, and we don't know what's in there. Asking yourself, can you predict what's in there? If that's about network coverage, calling it network coverage would be a better option than calling it connectivity. One of the other things that they do, which really drive me mad actually, burger menus. On their mobile site, their burger menu obviously doesn't work with all their users. So they've stuck a tooltip on when you first load up the website that says, this is the menu, this is where you should click. And that pops up every time you use their website. It would be so much better if it just had the word menu next to it as well. It would make it very simple, very clear, and they wouldn't need to have a tooltip. This one's quite amusing as well. That red, green, and yellow strip there is the main navigation for the website. Did some user testing on this. No one could find it. And it's quite obvious when you look at it and you sit back. Once you see one user do it, you go, oh, why didn't you see it? The second time you see a user do it, you go, oh, okay, we need to fix this. So where it says your home, that, or your home, your community, your trust, that's attached to the banner, whereas the content that it's related to is a good fingers gap away from the content that heading relates to. So visually, they're attached to the top of the content and not the bottom. So if that attachment was moved down, that would make that clearer. Also, because of the gridding on the calendar and the banner, the Your Trust looks it's like more attached to the calendar and uses the same colors as well. Doesn't mean everyone gets everything wrong though. So if you look at sites that do stuff well, this is the old Play website. I don't think it's still up there anymore. They understood that users came into their website from search engines or from referrals and stuff like that. They knew that most of their traffic wasn't coming in from the homepage. So as soon as you land on this page, you can very quickly see what section of the site you're in. There's a breadcrumb that makes it very clear for you to work out your way out if that's not the section you want to be in. And there's filters on the left-hand side that you can turn off and on. So by adding a few visual cues around the Blu-ray item in the top menu and by adding some extra layers of context to let people understand their position, if I come to this web page and it's not where I want to be, I can course correct and get to the right place much, much quicker. Page flows. This comes up a lot. This one really does come up a lot. So, has anyone ever been on the Audi website at all? Audi's got a really nice looking second-hand car section. And the first thing that happens when you go to search for cars is you get presented with this page. So while I was taking these screenshots, I was feeling a bit flash. So I scrolled down to the bottom and I clicked on Audi TT. Then another menu appeared, showing me all the Audi TTs. I then clicked on the RS Coupe, and nothing happened. A little tick appeared. And basically, I don't know how they've done it, but they've designed a search engine that's got a dead end. So I do something, and there's no active response, whereas what you have to do is you have to scroll to the top of the page, enter your postcode in that really tiny search box at the top, and then click that tiny search button at the right. But realistically, their whole paradigm, so if we go back to the ball passing video, was about teaching me to scroll down the page and interact with the bottom of the page. It would be so much better if that search button was at the bottom of the page. Have it at the top as well for people who only click at the top, but you've told me that I've got to go down, and when I get to the bottom, there's nothing there. Cool. This happens on content sites a lot too. So we did usability testing for Sport England in the summer, and we tested with a wide variety of users, and we were lucky enough to actually get users who had recently applied for funding through Sport England. And every one of the users got to this page. How many users do you think saw the Apply Now button? More than half? Less than half? 2. That's a massive Apply Now button. But it's because, one, it looks like an advert on another website, so you instantly sort of like get into your disregarding mode of, okay, that's probably not important. And the other thing is it's not within the context of the information that they're presenting me. So there's a nice intro at the top that says applying for funding, and then I scroll through the content, there's a video about it, and there's some stuff at the bottom. But the most prominent call to action is at the top of the page. So once they've got me to the bottom, I've then got to go back to the top to find what I need to do. A much better way of dealing with stuff like that, if you have to do it, is to pull it into the content so the user gets an awareness of it being content rich. So this is the content you're reading, and this is related content, and it's visually related as well. Cool. Calls to action. Buttons. This doesn't tend to happen on newer sites, but as sites start being maintained by their internal teams or by the main site teams, changes roll out. And what tends to happen is the calls to action become formulaic. So editors find a style they like for promoting content, so they use that one style. And what that does is that removes any level of priority from those actions. So a user coming to this site sees 3 actions with equal priority, but the chances are is the one on the left is the one they really want you to click. A good way of fixing this is to highlight the primary call to action. So you've probably seen that on sites like Amazon and things like that, where they've got the big yellow button. A much better thing to do is to treat buttons the same way you treat headings on text. So you have your primary button, your secondary button, and your tertiary button. So if the green button's buy now and the purple one's cancel, or I'd actually use a text link one for cancel, it would allow the user to get a clue of the importance of the action they're taking, and more likely help you increase conversions on a process as well. One company who are amazing at this is LinkedIn. So if you ever go to a LinkedIn profile, how many people have clicked that yellow button to get rid of that blue box? Anyone? Yeah, basically, I've come here, this is my boss's profile, but I've come here to view my boss's profile, and that's in my way, and there's a big yellow button there that makes it look like when I click it, that's going to get rid of that problem, and then I can get on with what I was doing. And so by having a layer of button priority, so endorse is the primary one, send a message is the secondary one at the bottom, and skip is the tertiary one, because I don't want you to skip that process. So you're providing cues to your users and giving them a nudge in the direction that you need them to go in. Simplicity. Simple is a very confusing thing to try and work out sometimes. Can you guys see the detail on these forms? So, which form do you think visitors engaged with most on this site? The left one or the right one? Who thinks the left one? Cool. Anyone think the right one? Why do you reckon? Why do you reckon? Yeah, so the one on the left is technically simpler. The one on the right is simpler because it stops me having to use my brain. So this company sells tape. So, you know, like police tape, the cordons off areas. If I'm filling in the form on the left, I have to work out what information I need to give that company for them to give me a valid response. I don't know what information they need. So the onus is on me to solve that problem. The one on the right, it's how long do you want it, what colors do you want, how many roles, 5 questions. And that company suddenly has a lot more useful information and there's a lot less banter going on. If I saw the left form, I would probably phone them up. Which one do you think results in more sales? Left or right? Loaded question. One on the right, 55% of the people who use that form bought something. So by making something simpler for the user and putting a little bit of effort into thinking about the problems that a user would have, the insight for this actually came out of user testing, of a user going through it and going, I don't know what they need to know. We were able to find a form that does it much better. It works better for the business, it works better for the user. Cool. So, out of the people in the room today, who's interested in running Guerrilla testing sessions? Cool, good. Totally do it, it's cheap, it's easy, and it's very good. I'm gonna talk and focus mainly on desktop and process. If you're around this afternoon, I would definitely go see Barry's talk about mobile testing. And the rig that you saw in some of the videos about mobile testing was actually the rig that Barry's going to be talking about. You'll get a lot out of it. So, Guerrilla testing. Basically, a few years ago, you needed some specialist equipment. You needed to spend a couple of £100 on software. These days, you don't. It's cheap, it's easy, and if you're going for the low end of the user, or the sort of like the downstream process of project work that I was talking about, when you're working out ideas, coming up with designs, you can do this very quickly and very easily. You probably only need 1 or 2 people, half a day, and you can get some good insights. The downside with doing Guerrilla is you just have to be a little bit more considerate of how you ask questions, so you don't encourage the user to do something that they wouldn't naturally do. And I'll talk you through that. So, getting the most from research. In general, you really want to be testing with between 5 and 10 users. Where possible, you want to be testing with a cross-section of representative users. If your users are trying to think of a good example. If your users are sporty people and you want to find people who are active in sports clubs, going into a cafe probably won't give you that insight because it's unlikely that you're going to find everybody who is very active sportily. Once you've decided what you want to test, it's normally better to find users who have just gone through the process that you're looking for. So if you're looking for people who may be looking to buy a car, find people who have bought a car and then get them to go through the process they went through buying a car on your site, for example. Or if they're going through the process of buying something on Amazon, instead of just saying, can you just go through the process of buying something on Amazon, instead of giving them 25 quid as a incentive, give them 25 quid to buy something on Amazon. And that will change the behavior that they use to go through that process, because that's their 25 quid then, and then they've got something that they're invested in. They want something that's valuable to them, so you will see their natural behaviors come out. So trying to find representative users is really important. When you're looking for things to test, the best place to start is to create a bullet list of your research objectives. I'll talk through that in a bit more in a second. And then I'll talk you through on the day in a second as well. So, research objectives. If you know what areas of the site that you're concerned about, write that as a list. So, for example, do users understand the navigation system or the secondary navigation system? Do they know how to get through a form if they encounter errors? Normally, the stuff that we see on websites is development teams are really good at developing around the happy path. Has everyone heard the term happy path before? Is that a new phrase? So basically, the happy path is if you start a task and you get to the end without having any error or any resistance at all. So you can log into account, you don't see you got your password wrong, you don't have to reset your password, you can go in, you can do something, you can check out, there's no errors, absolutely no errors on the process. The second you get into that error flow, you then start seeing issues that you can normally correct. So if someone's forgotten their password, once they've reset their password, taking them back into the login process means that they don't get a dead end, so you keep them on track. And write those things down as like objectives. Then, once you've got those objectives, write a task that encompasses that objective. So if it's understand secondary navigation and challenges with forms, can users find and complete the returns form? So there's your goal. You then turn that into a scenario which then allows the user to solve that problem. So after receiving a new camera, you have noticed the lens is cracked. Using the site, can you request a replacement? You don't mention forms, you don't mention whether they can find the returns thing specifically, so you can then see which way they would naturally go through a process. And that abstract layer is where you get the most insight, because you then see how users would naturally interact with a service. Whereas if you said, can you complete the returns form, they're instantly saying returns form, returns form, returns form, and they're looking for that word all over the site. User experience people tend to make a big deal about asking leading questions. And in the most part, you should try and avoid it, but in some cases you can't. If there's a specific service on a website that you want someone to find, and that's what it's called, not calling it that makes it then a more impossible task for the user. So if that's what something's called, call it that, and then see how they go through it. Once you've designed your scenarios, you should do a test on someone in the office who hasn't been involved in the project, and that will allow you to see where your wording needs correcting, and the task can be refined. Cool. The kit that you can use, and I'll get to one day in a second, is so cheap these days. So has anyone heard of a bit of software called OBS, Open Broadcast Software? Barry introduced me to this, and it's amazing. You can plug in as many webcams as you want, you can position them on a screen, and it's got a broadcast mode. So if you want to broadcast your user testing straight back to the office, effectively you can use something like Twitch or YouTube streaming, and you can send it back to the office. So while you're out in field doing some testing, the guys in the office can actually be getting the insights out of it. And it's so easy to use for desktop testing. You just load it up, put the desktop on, add the webcam, and then minimize it, and then the user's off. Takes no time at all to do. Really, really easy. I don't know if this is controversial for an Umbraco conference. Testing on users of your website is probably, or service, or digital artifact, or whatever it may be, is really important, but you need to consider all your users. So just testing on the public-facing users gives you an idea of how people are using your website. But if you've got editors who are using your website as well, you want to make sure that they're using the website to the best of their ability, because if they're not, then the end users are probably getting shortchanged as well. So if you can do user testing with people on the back-end system and see how they go through things like how you've laid content out across tabs, where they look for information, where they'd expect, how they would expect to use the CMS, or how they would expect to use the grid, you can then get more insight, which allows you to give not only better products to your customers, but also then better service to their users. And then on the day, I read an article a couple of years about doing Guerrilla testing, and it recommended doing this sort of testing with your users. Sorry, just checking time. That's terrible. If you can imagine sitting next to someone and giving them a task, if you look at that poor woman, she looks scared of that bloke sitting next to her writing in his pad. Everything that she's doing is being scrutinised. She's not even sitting at the computer probably, she's kind of sitting at it like that. If that guy was to sit back a little bit and just have the pad on his lap and just take a few short notes, she'd sit at the computer, and after a few seconds, she would almost just let him drift into the background, and she would just carry on. So the way you work with your users is equally as important as the questions you ask. When you're trying to work it out, find the most comfortable room you can, so the user feels as comfortable as they can, obviously. Sit back for the user, as I said. If the user asks you a question, always bounce it back to them. If they say, "Oh, what does this do?" What do you think it does? And by doing that, you're then getting their insight. If they get really, really stuck, help them out. There's absolutely no need to be a monster about it, because if they get to a point and it's broken and you know it's broken, letting them struggle just makes it worse for everybody. Once I've identified they can't get any further, and you should wait a little while, you can just give them a nudge, get them past it, and then you find out if the rest of the process is as good. And once you've got that, you can then go back, fix that bit, and then you're back to your happy path. Cool. One of the things that we've started using when we're doing Guerrilla stuff is we've got a grid, which effectively is a little spreadsheet which has got the tasks listed out on it, and also investigation areas, so around design, navigation, terminology, so that when we get back to the office, our analysis can be done without having to go through like 5 or 10 hours worth of video. And once we've got that, more post-it notes, we create a little spreadsheet. And the best thing about this spreadsheet is it's actionable. So this spreadsheet, once you've put all the issues in, and so effectively, it's quite hard to see, but you've got the issues on the left, then you've got the occurrence going across the top, so the things that occur most are probably issues you want to fix. So you can see all the top priority items. There's one caveat to that which is quite important, is just because 10 people having an issue means it's an issue and you should probably look at it. One person having an issue down at the bottom, that could be a deal breaker. That could be someone who forgot their password and got lost in the reset password phase, and only one person had that, but that person couldn't move on. So you kind of need to look at it with a level of pragmatism, but that's good, because you can take that in, you can pin it up in the office, and you can tick through stuff. Cool. So, summary. When you use testing, aim to use 5 to 10 users, pilot test your scenarios, make the test room as comfortable as possible, sit back so the user doesn't feel watched, reflective questioning, capture good, I didn't say that one, capture good and bad findings. When you go into user testing, you're looking for problems, and problems are great because you can fix problems, but when you report back, you don't want to get rid of the good stuff that you're doing, so make sure you capture the good stuff and give that as much balance as possible as well. And then after each session, do a quick wrap-up. So if there's 2 of you doing it, just join your thoughts together, because you might have a different interpretation of stuff, and you can then work out if you want to look out for stuff in other tests. Cool. Thank you. Any questions?